Well, welcome to the show. We're just doing this podcast stuff, trying to basically figure it out. Our main subject has been athletes, aging, and health. So I've got a very special guest to talk with tonight. Scott Summers, five-time GNCC champion, also a Hall of Famer. So I'm pretty blessed to have opportunity just to talk with him. Scott and I met many years ago. Um, when I worked for Al Baker, and he came down to race with Al and Randy Norman. So it's an honor to just have him in the house to talk about all this stuff. Anyway, now that we've introduced him, I will put Scott on and we can continue this conversation. There we go. All right, man.
Uh, is that going to work?
Yeah, looks good. You're framed in the middle.
Okay, good.
I got my headset on here. Just trying to figure all this stuff out.
Yeah, I'm pretty technologically, you know, ignorant. I think that's the word.
I don't know if you're ignorant. It's just things change so fast now,
Yeah,
right?
it's hard to teach us old dogs new tricks, right?
Yeah. Well, I've tried to stay up on it. I've been pretty good about staying up on this stuff and not messing around, because it kind of is a key feature of modern technology that if
Yeah,
you kind of stay up on it and you stay involved, you kind of have a foot up on everybody, right?
yeah,
Especially at an older age, because we can also build stuff and we can figure things out. And
yeah,
we've messed up a lot of stuff, so now we can like use these technologies to make our stuff better,
yeah.
right?
Luckily, my wife is good at technology, so
There you go. Anyway, I'm pretty stoked that we got to connect again. So yeah, you're thinking it's been 35 years since I first met you at Al Baker's, about right?
yeah. Well, that year I rode with Al Baker and Randy Norman was 1988.
That's
So,
right, because that was the first Baja I ever raced was the next year.
okay,
No, 87. No, I'd raced it before that, right? 88, 89. Yeah. So I raced it the year before. That was my first Baja,
okay.
and I ended up doing it solo. Unintentional, but man, it changed my life instantly.
you know, the race itself, there was just so much hype, you know.
Yeah,
Uh, that if you did well there, I think it really could kind of help you make a career out of racing dirt bikes. You
right,
know,
right.
the Baja out west was kind of like maybe the Blackwater was back east. Like
Correct.
you
Yeah,
could,
so
yeah, you could change your trajectory by winning that race.
it's changed a lot. We'll get into our subject here, but I mean, just because I haven't talked to you for so long, it's kind of cool to talk to somebody who's actually experienced it and understands. But it's changed so much. In the beginning, it was like, hey, you could just build a bike. Anybody could do it. Show up, a couple buddies, and show up in Baja, and you're a Baja racer. But now it's gotten so technical, so much involved. I kind of wish they just turn it into a rally. I think it would be safer, and I
Yeah,
think it would be a much better venue for everyone.
yeah,
No more pre-running, because now you get out there on the race course and it's like, man, 40-inch trophy truck tires with four-wheel drive. I'm telling you, you just can't believe what that race course looks like now.
yeah. I
And I
can.
kind of miss the old days, where it was like you could just get on it and just be wide open and just ride some whoops and get on some fast stuff, but it ain't like that now. It's
Yeah.
it's just hammer time.
Yeah. And then the course is so long, there's just so many variables that are kind of beyond your control. And that's where
Right.
safety's got to be kind of sketch. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then now it's become very expensive.
Yep.
Technically, you've got to have, a Stella unit. You've got to have a Spica, which is like a little puck, GPS unit that you got to put on the person.
I
It has
see.
to switch with the rider every single time. And then you've got, just all the extra stuff you got to put on the bikes now, compared to what we used to. It was like, put some lights on that thing, you're good.
Yeah.
But it's not that simple,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And the motorcycle, hey, you could have bought an XR 600, back then for 32.99 out the door,
Yeah.
under 4 grand. But, now you can't even start to think about a Baja adventure without starting with a 11, 12, $14,000 motorcycle out of the gate
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
I'm so grateful that I got the opportunity to do it, from the competitive side, but just the beauty of that place was
yeah,
just overwhelming. Like luckily when you're pre-riding, you can kind of look around and enjoy it. When you're racing, you got to be focused on those rocks and in those sand washes that are trying to
yep,
sneak up on you at 80
yeah.
miles an hour.
A little different than GNCC, right?
Yeah, yeah,
A little faster.
yeah. My recollection back in when I was doing that stuff, I think we averaged around 60 miles an hour, and at a
Yeah,
GNCC, we're averaging about half that. So it's a
right.
whole different ballgame. Yeah.
Exactly. But okay. So anyway, the reason we're having this conversation is, we're kind of in the same journey and the same path. We're aging athletes and we're starting to like realize that something's not right with our bodies physiologically. Um, almost identical situation to you is, racing full time and you're training and, you're doing 48 weekends out of the year. It's no big deal. You can just eat as many calories as you want and you're just using that stuff. And your kidneys and your liver, all that's working great. But, as you start getting older and you decide, okay, I'm not going to take the risks anymore racing and it's just not worth it, and I've done my thing. And then you slow down. And then what happens? What happened to you, Scott?
Well, I was active in racing up until about 2008. And I was managing, but part of my contract was to race the vet class. So I was still racing, even though I was managing some younger guys.
Sure.
Which was great because that was kind of my thing. I have always been very uh,
Racer.
yeah, I've been a racer. It's very a lot of adrenaline. It's a lot of fun. But the thing I never realized until I retired was all that activity, all that training and jogging and wearing a heart rate monitor and lifting weights and practicing and jogging and all the things. I mean, I was probably spending 6, 7 hours a day with a pretty high heart rate,
Yeah.
for what, the first 40 years of my life. And I
Right.
had no idea that all that exercise was acting like a counterbalancer for the ridiculous amount of carbohydrates that I was eating. Um, like if you think of carbs and sugar as venom, it's not really that good for you. But as long as there's exercise component, then it averages everything out, and you don't manifest any problems.
Right.
But sure enough, as soon as I completely retired and kind of hung the boots and the helmet up and rolled the motorcycles into the garage, within about, I'm going to say 4 months or so, I started developing all these physical problems and psychological problems. And it was a long list. Like all of a sudden, I had about 15 things wrong with me that were pretty serious, that were going to require that I got on, pharmaceuticals for the rest of my life in order to try to, maintain, these terrible things.
Right.
And it was arthritis. It was problems with my thyroid. I had a serious mental illness where I developed bipolar disorder and was in the state psychiatric hospital twice here in Kentucky, in Lexington, Kentucky. I was absolutely nuts. And I was always like, what the heck happened to me? I had good success as kind of an athlete for decades. And
Right.
then finally, it kind of came to me slowly what happened. But I had always thought that the motorcycle somehow was affording me the opportunity to have my health. And when I subtracted the motorcycle and all that came with it, my health got subtracted. And it's
Right.
kind of a long story how I arrived at what I learned. Um, but one of the things was I had a good friend whose wife developed ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease.
Sure.
And he was my boss at the time, and she was a good friend. I just really liked them both. And I've always kind of been a researcher. I enjoy, I think I enjoy reading. I enjoy getting answers to my questions. So anyway, I did a deep dive on ALS. Like, is there any kind of protocol out there, not necessarily conventional, just any protocol that could
Right.
help this disease? Well, I read and read and read, and I came across some things that I thought were really extraordinary. And of course, I shared them with my friend Mike and with Jane. And it involved carb restriction, extreme
Hmm.
carb restriction. Basically, get your body in ketosis. And what I found out later was your brain loves ketones as opposed to sugar. I had no idea that our bodies are like hybrid cars. We can run on sugar, which is glucose,
Right.
or in the absence of that, we can switch over to burning fat, which is ketones. And the brain, I think, likes ketones better than glucose.
Right.
Uh, so anyway, there's technical aspects of this, and I read lots of books, and I told Jane, I said, hey, it sure seems like there's been a lot of people that have had good success completely eliminating carbs. Well, she
Right.
couldn't do it. She couldn't do it because she liked her
She
Pop
likes
Tart
that pie.
and her Budweiser and whatever. And
Right.
I said, well, I tried my hardest, and I continued to follow some guys that came up with some protocols. Even Stephen Hawking, he lived with that disease for, I'm going to say, about 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
Uh, and he started doing carb restriction when he was 21, when he first got diagnosed. I have no idea why he never shared that with the public, because if everyone knew, that was his key to paradise, to keeping him
Yeah.
alive,
Yeah.
and that's remarkable. So I don't understand why that cat never got let out of the bag.
Yeah.
But anyway, so a long story shorter, Jane passed away. We lost Jane, and my friend lost his wife, and it was terrible.
Right.
Here's the craziest thing about the whole story. You know how in the Bible it talks about when you do for others, in a roundabout way, things will happen for you. Like 10
Right.
times more will happen for you than what you
Yeah.
invested in others.
Universal karma.
This is exactly what happened. All this knowledge that I developed for the love of a friend wound up having an application and completely changing my life. I
Right.
feel like since I started doing this, I've been reverse aging. I no longer have bleeding gums. I
Yes.
no longer have depression or
Yes.
anxiety. I have energy galore. I wake up in the morning and I say, "Thank you, Lord, guide my steps." I got so much done yesterday, I can't believe it, but I know I'm going to get even more done today.
Right.
it's
Right.
it's remarkable. So I love sharing this information. It's non-conventional. And in my research, when I looked back at, how did our medical system get to where it is? Over 100 years ago, there was a theory called terrain theory,
Hmm.
where it was what medicine always was for thousands of years. If something's wrong with you, you look at the terrain. What are you eating? What are you drinking? What environmental toxins are you exposing yourself to? um, how much sunlight are you getting? Are you touching your bare feet on the earth? Like, are you doing these
Right.
things that what I understand now contribute to health or not? Well, unfortunately, John Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie got involved. This is 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And what they said, based on the Flexner report and a lot of kind of bogus research, is that they had a better way. And their way was to treat symptoms in perpetuity. Don't treat root problems, but we're going to sell you the way to treat these root symptoms and these symptoms, not root causes. And
Correct.
guess what? These are all based on petrochemicals. These pharmaceuticals are all made from virtually petroleum. So I have a really hard time understanding how, from an ethical, moral standpoint, this system became our primary system. But when I think about the money that it has made, then it's very easy for me to understand
Right.
why germ theory is the predominant system of health in America and probably around the world. So basically, what I learned is that we made a huge mistake 100 years ago. We were implementing terrain theory, and it was working great. But
Hmm.
as soon as these kind of shysters came along, they spent a fortune funding all the medical schools. They
Yep.
corrupted all the curriculums, and they completely changed the whole environment of what healthcare is. And gosh, how many people have lost decades off of their lives? How many people suffer multitudes of sicknesses that are just coming up every day, a new
Right.
one?
Or just being
All
sick for no reason.
right, all for the purpose of making these greedy people money. It is about the most disgusting thing that I still have a hard time believing it.
Right.
Uh, and here's the thing: if you think I'm crazy for saying these things, there's something very simple you can do. If there's anything wrong with you, you can do tests on yourself. You can use your own body as a case study, and you can say, okay, I've been observing germ theory my whole life. Whenever I get sick, I go to the doctor. He writes me a prescription. I take that prescription, but then I have to deal with the side effects.
Yep.
And it's really just treating my symptoms. It's not getting to the root cause. Or there's another way, and I'm here to tell you what it is. You go buy a blood ketone monitor. Uh, you learn what those foods are that are actually cell repair foods as opposed to cell damage foods. And there's two ways to go about it. I mean, I think a vegetarian can pull this off the same way a carnivore or a keto person can
Sure.
pull it.
They might
Um,
take a little more work because
right,
it's not
right,
as easy with vegetables
right,
alone to get
right.
those types of minerals that we need as a carnivore.
That's right.
That's
Vegetables
the struggle.
have lectins and oxalates and
Right.
anti-nutrients, carcinogens. So you got to learn how to cook and prepare all that stuff.
Right.
Try to minimize the damage from all those things. And here's something funny. A plant doesn't have legs like a rabbit. Because a rabbit has legs, it can run away from being eaten. But a plant can't do that. So the plants developed these chemical defense mechanisms in their own body, in the structure of their
Systems.
leaves,
Yeah.
right, to defend themselves. Um, to
Makes
me,
sense.
that's very fascinating. So anyway, a plant's seed is the plant's baby. So in the seeds, those things are very concentrated, and that's where things like cyanide came from. There's
Right.
cyanide in apple seeds. This
Yeah.
is also simple yet complex because these are things that we should have learned in school, but the school's curriculums were compromised in order to
Right.
protect these money trees from these people I'm going to call monsters. um, so yeah, I love teaching people what I've learned. And the crazy thing about it, Rob, is I don't have these certificates on my wall. I didn't go to all these fancy schools and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like,
Right.
I basically went to YouTube University and I read books. Uh,
Well,
and,
think about it. We have the biggest base knowledge system in our phone. Like
right,
literally. We have the smartest computer, AI, all of this stuff. And if you can't come up with an answer, reasonable answer, either they're completely manipulating that answer or it's 100%. Like it's right there in front of us. We didn't even have this stuff before. You know,
right.
it's it's almost putting a college professor out of work
Well, and
to a point.
I agree. And there's another layer to it. I think as you start doing research, you kind of develop radar for bullcrap. So the first thing you have to do is
Yeah,
follow the money. Okay, like,
right.
is this person giving me this advice? Are they encumbered by somebody? And of course, then you got to throw what they're saying out because they're being paid to say things. But
Correct.
somebody like me, I'm not getting paid by anybody.
Yeah.
I
By
can
the
just
way, we're not paid in any way, shape, or form. And
uh,
we are not doctors and we're not giving medical advice. This is just
and,
our own life experience. as athletes and as, professionals, that I think we're way more in tune because of being an athlete and being in that particular realm. It gives us a little bit better perspective and our bodies are more in tune. We see the changes so much more drastically. And I mean, it's just like in your face.
Yeah, and maybe that's why you and I are able to kind of weed through this stuff better than the average person because we're used to working on motorcycles. And with motorcycles, you have, if the motorcycles are patient, right? We have to look for root causes of the problems. Like, would we, diagnose a motorcycle that was running bad and sputtering and things? You know, would we just replace the engine? No, we would make sure the air filter's clean first. You know, that old saying that we always say, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah,
Um,
kiss.
right, yeah, and these doctors, they are not looking for root causes. They're
No.
just treating the symptoms. And what that means is the root cause continues to manifest problems forever. And that's just going to bring the doctor more money down the road. You know, when your diabetes turns into cancer or,
You're a captive patient now
that's
because
right.
you're relying on the crack dealer
Yeah.
and you're relying on the crack that the crack
Yeah.
dealer's selling. And
And
he's convinced you that this is the crack you need in order to survive.
right. A cured patient is a lost customer.
Yep.
Uh, to me, this is just remarkable, And the other thing about doctors, when they go to medical school, they are being flooded with what I'm going to call compromised information. There's a reason why doctors have to basically take 0 hours of nutrition classes, but still get their degree. Well, why do you think that is? I tell you what it
It's
is.
it's shocking.
If they knew what I know and what you know about nutrition, they could doctor their way right out of having no customers. And that's it. That is
Yeah.
as simple as that. So anyway, now I understand, we have like 32,000 foods on average in our grocery stores. It is my belief that about 100 of them are fit for human consumption.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about cleaning products too. I mean,
Oh yeah.
you probably really ought to only have vinegar and baking soda and do everything for that because that stuff won't kill you.
That's
Uh,
what we do. That's what we do here in our home. Like I mean, our laundry soap we got rid of. We use baking soda and something else that my wife mixes with it.
yeah,
Um, even the shower that I shower with now, I put a filter on the shower head. Like
yeah,
I'm looking at everything. It's not, and this isn't something that just happens overnight. It takes time.
right,
But once you become aware, you start looking at things, and that's what's important for people to understand. It's like make the first step, and
right,
then all of a sudden your eyes are opened, and then you start seeing things. It's like, like we talked about, the veil has been lifted. The awakening is happening, and you're like, oh man, what happened? This
yeah,
this wasn't here before, and now I see it.
yeah. It's pretty bizarre, if you think about um, just conspiracy theorists, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's just say there's one thing that's kind of bothering you. Like, really, do you think this is different than what we've been sold or told to believe our whole lives? Well, guess what? As soon as you do a deep dive on one thing, and I don't care what it is, there's 1,000 different things you can do a deep dive on. But as soon as you do a deep dive on one and you find out, oh my God, we have been lied to, this is not the truth. Well, guess what happens? Well, then you start looking into other stuff.
Yeah.
and, and then you look into the second thing that's kind of bugging you.
Yep.
And then you're like, oh my God, this is just like the first thing. Well, eventually
Yep.
you start looking into so many different things. I mean, I'm overwhelmed. It's like, is there anything that
I
turned out to be what I thought it was? And I
right.
can only think of one thing. I can only think of one thing.
Okay, hit
And
me.
that is something I learned in vacation Bible school. And it
Okay.
was a song. And it was Jesus loves me, this I know, because the Bible tells me so. That is the only thing in my whole world that turned out to be true. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. Like it is true though. Like you start looking at everything in front of you and the narrative that you've been fed for your whole life,
Yeah,
and you believed it.
yeah,
I mean, growing up in school, it was like, oh yeah, man, 4 food groups. That's awesome. Yeah, get your vaccines. It's to keep you alive. All
Yeah,
of these things. And you're right. There's not many of those things that you could actually put a finger on and say, oh, that was absolutely correct. I'm
yeah,
like, I still have to have some validity for any of it.
yeah,
I'm like, are any of these vaccines good for us? But that's, I mean, it's your choice, but it's like, look how many there are.
yeah.
Like, really?
It is my opinion that there's never been a good one. You know how much marketing went into this latest one, and how many
Yeah,
dollars were made, and how much harm was done. Well, do you think they didn't do marketing back in
right.
the old days? Well, I'm here to tell you,
Sure.
follow the
Yeah,
money, and
yeah,
when you really do a deep dive on it, what you discover is that these big gains that were made, they weren't from vaccines. They were from things like cleanliness and not living in squalor and septic and stuff, you know.
correct.
Yes,
Correct.
the vaccine makers were brilliant and they took credit, for the success of the betterment of humanity. And it
Right.
was all me, it was all a big trick. So it's just it's kind of amazing the
Well, I'll tell
lack.
you something. Go ahead. I'm sorry,
Well,
Scott.
just I was just going to say the lack of morality across the board. You know, it's like if the biblical teachings were involved in all these huge companies that are extracting our health and our lifespans all for a profit, it would all be different. You know, like in the board room of Pepsi or Procter and Gamble or Red Bull, like if there was a Bible in there, these people would not be making these decisions these
Right.
ways. You know, like if you love your neighbor like yourself, well, you're going to be raising, let's say, grass-fed, grass-finished beef,
Right.
because when your neighbor eats that beef, their mind is going to be cognitively sharp. They're going to be happy. They're not going to have anxiety. Yet, you know, those people have been demonized, which was very clever. You know, they tried to blame all the problems that were caused by excess carbohydrate and sugar consumption on cholesterol and red meat and butter and all these things that are very good for us. That
Yeah.
was very, very clever, and they
Yeah.
had, the tobacco industry, they bought all the food companies and they started adding all those 500 chemicals that the FDA approved to put in tobacco to make it more addictive. Well, they
Yeah.
started putting all those same chemicals in the foods. So from a business perspective, they were very smart, but from a morality standpoint, they were about as evil can be, because from that point forward, now even if you know what the right food is to eat, you can't stop eating the crap because you're
Right.
addicted. Yeah,
Oh, I know. I love it. I love potato chips, man. I
right.
love I love ho-hos and ding dongs, man.
Yeah,
It's it's really difficult even now. It's like even though I know, it's still difficult to like just okay, yeah, I don't want to eat that, but man, I sure do love those Snickers, or
yeah,
those, you know, wafer bars, whatever it is. And it's like and I still live in a real world. So it's like I haven't cut out everything and just tried to be like, total veganish, where you're like, I
yeah,
don't appreciate you eating my food's food, getting just completely nuts. But, I try to be realistic. And that's like the second part here I hope we'll get to is like how do you maintain that? Like how is your normal daily, consumption of food look like? What would somebody do? Because this is kind of what I want to get to. It's like we can talk about this and go back and forth. And a lot of people already kind of know some of what we're talking about, and it's not a secret anymore, right? I don't think
right.
they're hiding it anymore.
Yeah,
It's just they're just letting it coast, and they're not trying to change it unless they're forced to change, right?
right. And,
So
and,
so
and
how what do we do from here? What does somebody do like that's in our position that's like, well, here's what makes it rough. Because you and I have been athletes and training and running and doing Ironman stuff and just really killing it. So we've pushed ourselves to the extreme. And so we felt that what's good with our body. Let's just imagine the average guy. He's, 35 years old, been working at the same company forever. He works indoors. He might go to the racquetball club or which they probably don't have anymore, golfing or whatever it is. And he does that every once in a while and they have a few beers while they're shooting some golf balls. And that's his life, and he might just go on a hike with his family or something here and there. but he's never really pushed to that level that you and I have had to go to keep
Yeah.
that maintenance, right?
Yeah.
And so he's been bombarding his body for year after year after year with the same toxic chemicals in the foods, with the same, hey, eat the grains, eat the rice, eat the potatoes. It's all good. Just make sure you get like, good quality stuff. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, what is good quality? And that
Well,
guy's really toxic now. So he's
yeah.
50 years old, and you know, he's got diabetes. He's got high blood pressure all of a sudden. He's struggling. He's got some visceral fat. That guy is in really bad shape. You and I can notice it right away and go, okay, we got to make a change. And we're willing because we know how mechanisms work. But that guy is just kind of like, well, I go see my doctor and see what he says, right?
Yeah.
And
Well,
what do we do from there?
a couple of things came to mind when you were talking about that. I have a method that has worked great for me. Whether it would work for anybody else, I don't know. But you make a good point about motorcycle racing. We kind of know that in order
Or
to
any
get
trainer,
results,
anybody who's
right,
extreme, really put
in order to get
effort
the
into their health.
you have to put in the effort. And we've seen that effort equals results. So it's easy for us to come up with the discipline to do what we got to do to win a
Right.
race. So for me, these people have to have a why as to before they change anything in their life. And to me, a big why was the biblical teachings. Like in the Bible, it talks about how our bodies are our temple. And I think about my body like this thing was a gift from God. So do I want to treat this thing with respect, or do I want to abuse it, and
Right.
potentially shorten my life by even 30 years, if I just kind of do anything and everything. So there's that. If you're a believer, then by golly, respect the gift and learn all you can about, treating this thing right. Um, the other thing is, I think about that motivates me is that these companies that are making these poisons, they're profiting off of, they're counting on the fact that we're going to actively engage in the destruction of ourselves. Well, do we really want to do that? Do we want to pay these guys to destroy us? I say, hell no, I am not getting my hard earned money out of my wallet and
Right.
going to go Mountain Dew or Pepsi shopping or, you know what I mean?
Red Bull.
Yeah, Red, I'm not putting that crap on my body and paying people to poison me. That makes no sense at all. And to me, that's ridiculous. So
It is.
I say, let's educate ourselves. Let's boycott the crap. Let's honor these God given bodies. And so there's your why. Okay. There's your why. And then the way you go about it is very simple, at least for me. If you want to go the carnivore way, you simply just eat single ingredient foods. So if it came from something with a heartbeat, or if it was made from something that had a heartbeat, like eggs or butter or cottage cheese or cream cheese, all those things came from something that had a heartbeat. And when God was in the food production business, his main priority was nutrient density because he loved us. Now, when man got involved in food production, he didn't care about nutrient density at all. In fact, in order to increase the profitability and the shelf life of the foods, he had to take nutrient density out so these foods wouldn't spoil. And that's where
Right.
we are today in 2025. You've got all these companies that are under a lot of pressure, to keep the stock prices high. And in order to do that, they're kind of sticking it to the people that are consuming these foods. It's
Yeah.
very simple. There's probably 7 things I buy at the grocery store. I buy ground beef. I buy real cheese that only has like 1 or 2 ingredients. I buy eggs, and I don't even drink milk because milk has lactose, which is a sugar. Uh, I make my own milk using heavy whipping cream and spring water. It's just as good as milk. And when I get a hankering for some sweet stuff, there's some wonderful alternatives that taste just as good as sugar, but they don't spike the glycemic index. They're not
Right.
poison, and
Right.
those things like allulose and stevia and monk fruit. You add
Yep.
that to your yogurt or to your coffee in the morning with some heavy whipping
Yep.
cream. It tastes just like sugar. Um, And in fact, allulose is kind of exciting. What they're learning is not only does it not spike your blood sugar, they believe it actually lowers your blood sugar. So when
Huh.
you're eating that stuff, you're actually thwarting all kinds of downstream manifestations of illness. And
Right.
and what I've learned is this is all about blood sugar. You know, and what
Yep.
that means is that every every doctor, every surgeon, every psychiatrist, every fertility clinic, every medical, everybody, they ought to be giving every patient that walks in the door an oral glucose tolerance test. Because what that'll do is it'll instantly tell the patient whether they are kind of have toxic levels of blood sugar or not. Are they insulin
Right.
sensitive or are they insulin resistant? And for an insulin sensitive person, yeah, you can have a glass of milk and it won't hurt you at all. But if you're insulin resistant, you better not drink that milk. You better not eat those blueberries or those strawberries. And for God's sake, you better not eat a bowl of Pop Tart or, Wheaties or, eat Pop
Yeah.
Tarts.
Yeah.
Uh,
Any complex carbs that take a long time to dissipate and then
right.
just keep trickling into your bloodstream.
Right. It's just so simple, Rob.
Yeah.
If everybody wore a continuous glucose monitor, they would know instantly. Hey, yeah, I shouldn't eat that sandwich just yet because my blood sugar's still up from whatever I ate for breakfast that had too much sugar in it. They
Right.
would educate themselves so much that there would be no need for all these doctors.
Well, we have these smart watches now. You would think that they have the technology to do that and just put it in your watch, right? And it'll
Right,
just tell you, "Hey man, not time to eat. You
right.
might feel hungry, go drink some water."
Right. And how cool would it be if our grocery stores had a labeling system for the foods? Because we know that sugar spikes, creates all these problems in our body. What if we had categories of foods in our groceries? What if all green label foods were cell repair foods, meaning
Right.
they're only protein and fat, they're healthy, just like God made foods, and then all these super sugary foods filled with seed oils. Well, there's a red label on those, just like a traffic light, like proceed with caution. You might
Yeah.
not want to come into this intersection. Don't even
Yeah.
buy crap, you know. And then all the yellow foods are maybe the gray area in between the green and red, like,
Those are your 10% getaways,
right. And
right?
me, I would love to see somebody like RFK Jr. implement some system like that because let's be honest, I'm probably kind of an anomaly. The fact that I have the time on my hands to read all these books, to listen to all these podcasts, and I kind of have an obsessive kind of personality. Like when I dig into something, I don't let it go until I know everything
Right.
there is to know. Most people are so overwhelmed with life, they don't have time to even check their email, let alone read books.
Right.
So
Well,
it,
that's the mentality of a winner, right? I mean, that's exactly how it is when people like yourself and myself, for you and myself, um, we get caught on something and it's like we know we got to get to the end. We got to get to the end result. We got to just push as hard as we can to figure out what that is. I mean, I do that with pretty much everything, and the problem is I know too much, so I have to slow myself down sometimes so I can just focus. Otherwise, I'll start doing 10 different things, and that's a
yeah,
whole nother problem.
yeah,
Now,
yeah,
now I can fix it all, but it's like, okay,
yeah,
bro, you can't fix it all. You got to just pump the brakes and focus on that one thing. But once I do, it's like, a dog on a bone. I don't want to let go until I finish that task and understand it and get it. And I think that's the same mentality with racing is that,
yeah,
you can't let up, dude.
yeah,
When the checker flag drops, okay, there you go. You cross the finish line, win, place, or show. You gave it 100% to
yeah.
get there.
So I guess if if I have some level of notoriety still in the motorcycle industry, I've kind of been away for maybe 15 years
Dude,
or so.
you're
Um,
Scott Summers.
what what
You're
I would
five-time GNCC winner, dude. You're
you
Hall of
know,
Fame.
what I would say to all the guys that are currently actively racing is I want them to learn from my mistakes, right? Like
Right.
as soon as you hang up that helmet and those goggles, absolutely reduce your carbohydrate consumption by at least 50%, maybe
Yep.
as much as 80 or 90%, because, I kind of got sucked into the whole carbo loading thing back when
Yeah,
I
me
was
too.
doing my
Same.
stuff. my grandfather was a lobbyist and he worked for the American Heart Association, and they sponsored a guy that ran across, I think, the whole country. And he was like, Scott, this guy's just eating spaghetti. You know, every time he stops running, he's eating spaghetti. So you got to load up on these carbs if you want to be a premier athlete.
Right.
Well, at the time, that's what we thought was true.
Right.
But it turned out to be pretty much bogus. You know, I believe Professor Tim Noakes over in Australia, I think he's proven that, you know, once you become fat adapted, you can burn fat and protein just as good
Yes.
as you can glucose. And
More.
in
More.
fact,
We're
yes,
talking thousands of calories.
right. Because if you're a glucose burner, you can bonk and then you're done if you forget to
Yeah.
eat enough while you're having your
Yep.
exertion. But if you're fat adapted, you don't bonk. You
Right.
just continue to burn that stored body fat,
Right.
and you're like Superman. And there's no kryptonite.
Right. Exactly. You got it? Hold on. Something happened here. Did you lose your audio?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, there we go. Now
Okay.
we're back on.
All right.
Great.
But
Yeah, I
yeah,
just
you know, I just want people to learn from my mistake. You know, number
right.
one, you don't need all those carbs, and you know, like we talked about the other day. Had I not been doing all that exercise, by the time I was 40, I just know I would have been a diabetic. I would have had multiple cancers. I probably would have been morbidly obese. You see what I mean?
Right. Right.
Uh, and that is important to understand. Um, because we were really misguided on that whole carbohydrate thing.
Just
It,
slightly.
yeah, it's just not necessary at all. So to me, there's three problems with human health. It's environmental toxins, it's the consumption of seed oils, and it's the
Hmm.
consumption of sugar, too many carbohydrates. And to me, they should change the name of every human affliction, whether it be a physical thing or a psychological thing. They should all be renamed. And the new name ought to be SOS, um, sugar overconsumption syndrome. It,
Right.
it, it's that simple.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't solve all your problems, then it might be another SOS. It might be seed oil overconsumption syndrome. And if that doesn't solve all your problems, well, then it's environmental toxins, too much Lysol, too much bleach.
Yep.
Dipping your hands in that gasoline to wash the air filters. Not such a good idea, right, Rob?
We used to do that, right? It was like it was no big deal.
Right. So so anyway,
Crazy.
you know, I feel like I want to be a health coach these days
Yeah.
because I've learned so much, and I've become my own successful case study. I've applied my learnings to
Right.
myself, and lo and
Yep.
behold, I found that everything that I tried worked. And you know, as I looked back in time, you know, the people, the Inuit people up in the Arctic, you know, that those climates were so difficult that there was no carbohydrates that could grow there. So what did
Right.
the people eat? They ate walrus and seal and fish. And
Fat.
guess they
Fat.
had no illnesses. They had no illnesses for who knows how long.
Crazy.
And there's been many people that have made this discovery, but unfortunately, these sugary foods are so profit rich that they've simply been erased from the historical record,
And they're
all
really good.
to protect the profits. Um, and you know, um, the guy in Hollywood, what was his name, that had that successful book for many years back in the 70s? Um, the Dr. Robert Adkins.
Oh, right.
He discovered these things. He was reversing all kinds of illness. He was helping people lose all kinds of weight. But whatever happened, it all just kind of fizzled and went away. But guess what? There are people that have been on that diet ever since the 70s. And
Yeah.
you look at them and you talk to them, they're machines. Like they are
Right.
healthier than healthy can
Well,
be.
a good example is, you ever meet an old cowboy that lives on a ranch?
Yeah,
These guys are like wire and they
yeah,
are like solid. I mean, they have no fat on them. because they're
Yeah.
just riding a horse all day, working with cattle, and they eat meat primarily, right? And
Yeah.
it's like these guys are like unbelievably healthy. They're like 80 years old and still out there working on the ranch, and the doctor can't even get a needle in their skin. They're so damn tough.
Yeah. And, and I think that God's design of the human body was perfect. We have this kind of miraculous healing mechanism that hardly anybody ever uh, basically utilizes. And that is these cell repair things called autophagy and mitophagy.
Right.
Well, the only way these things get activated is if you put no sugar in your mouth or anything that turns into sugar, like potatoes, rice, pasta, cereal, for 3 solid days. So the first 40 years of my life, I guarantee you, I was having something sugary every few
Every
minutes, let
single
alone 3 days.
day.
Right.
Yes.
So I was drinking Gatorade and on and on and on.
The
So
same. Same here.
I never unlocked that magical healing mechanism because that's what it requires to activate. And I'm
Right.
going to just kind of postulate or speculate that the majority of Americans throughout their whole lives, and I don't care if they're 90 years old, very few of them have ever utilized this miraculous healing mechanism. Um, and what a shame that is. Yeah, because it's hard to be hungry. Um, but as long as you are very disciplined about what you put in your mouth, you can activate that mechanism. You can check your blood using a blood ketone monitor, and you can get yourself into ketosis by only eating protein and fat. And then there's no suffering required. You don't have to even fast. You don't have to, go hungry. And guess what? This mechanism is remarkable. It reverses all illness. It prevents all illness. And I'm talking about everything. I'm talking about diabetes. I'm not just talking about
Right.
cancer. I'm talking about everything. I'm talking about young
Yeah.
women that are going to fertility clinics and can't get pregnant. Guess what, young
Yeah.
lady? Stop eating the sugar.
My
Um,
daughter did the exact same thing. That's exactly what she did. That's what I've done.
yeah.
Um,
And
and it's crazy how quick it happens.
right,
I'm not talking months. We're talking days,
right.
right?
When,
That's what's amazing. Like days. If you could just
and you know
stick
what?
with it for just a week, your life will change. It's that quick.
That's right. You give it a week or two, and then once you start seeing the changes, well, then there's all the motivation you need to stay the course.
Exactly. You
You
don't
know,
want to change
but
because you feel
think
so
about
much
these.
better. You're like, God, I feel so good now, you know?
Right. I think about these young women that are getting ready to have a baby. They always get morning sickness real bad. But then I start thinking, hey, wait a minute. Uh, is God giving them morning sickness so that they stop consuming any toxic food? Because when you have morning sickness, the last thing you want to do is eat.
Is
Well,
eat.
what's that going to do
Yeah.
after? That's going to put you in ketosis, and that's going to
Right.
create a wonderful environment for that little baby that you're in the process of making. Is that not awesome? Can you imagine that
It's
all
true.
these things, that we think are so bad, they're actually good? It really gets your gears turning, like there's something to this. I don't believe in coincidences anymore.
Right.
Life is amazing. But we have to navigate these evil people that wish to do us harm in the process of extracting money from our wallets. And, as I look at all different facets of human life, there's so many different ways to solve problems. Um, but yet, it seems like the way people are going in all these facets of life are the ways that are the most profitable. And what a shame,
Yeah.
like maybe there is technology, for a car to run on something like hydrogen, and but for whatever reason, these patents get bought up, and these brilliant people just disappear.
Yeah. Magically,
Yeah,
he just
those were the easy
disappeared.
ways that there wouldn't have been any profit. So for whatever reason, yeah, we don't go down that road. We're in the
Yeah.
profit extraction business. It's kind of a dark realization, um, and it's a shame. But I have faith and I have hope that things are getting better because think about the enlightening process. ever since COVID, so many people are awake to the
Yeah,
games,
right.
and so many people are doing their research. And I honestly do think we're on the precipice of things really turning around and getting better. And I think we're going to look back at these times as like the dark ages. Like, man, they were really being
Remember the
snowed for
COVID
that
years?
50-year period.
But yeah, I mean, all the stuff you're saying right now is 100% on target with everything that I've gone through already. Like exactly like I mean, I think we were just walking in the same boots, man. You know, everything you're saying, it just is exactly what I've gone through. As far as like the diet, just realizing what's wrong and trying to change these things and the same quick learning curve
Yeah,
about some of these things has just been like just boom. It just happened so fast. I mean, in the last year I've learned so much that like you, I'm so excited about it because I'm like I learned so much. It's like, holy crap, we're talking about longevity. We're not talking about just, a new part. We're talking
yeah,
about people's lives that
right.
they could literally extend their lives. And it's like, and here I am going, okay, I just hit 60. How old are you now, Scott?
I'm 58 right now. Yeah,
Yeah, so I got you beat. So
yeah,
it's like, I'm going, hey, I'm at 60 and I'm going, okay, now that I feel better than I have in the last 10 years, what am I going to do with the rest of my life?
yeah,
What goals do I have to set now? You know,
yeah,
what accomplishments can I do? And I'm thinking, I'm in such good shape compared to 90% of the population right now. Why would I lay down and just give up
yeah.
when
And
most people are thinking, this is it? What do I do for retirement now?
that's right. It's amazing. It's so amazing that until it happens to you, until you see these things in the mirror, you wouldn't believe it. You
Right,
know, when I
right.
tell people that every bit of my arthritis is completely gone, and
Yeah,
I had it in my fingers, I had it in my knees, in my hip, in my ankles. I mean, that stuff was eating me alive, and now I have no trace of it whatsoever. Now, now one day I ate an apple, and
yeah,
within about 20 minutes, the arthritis
yeah,
in my fingers came back.
yeah.
Like, okay, that's
I
all
have
I
this, I
need
have
to
a
know.
similar experience when I start, if I, get, I like Starbucks. Okay. I'm not going to lie. I like Starbucks. So, and I didn't before because I was just like, I'm not into Starbucks. But, now I really like coffee because it's kind of my go-to thing when I'm like really hungry. I'm like, just have a cup of coffee.
Yeah,
At least it keeps your heart rate up and it keeps your metabolism going. But, it's not good for your stomach because it starts burning you up after a while. So I drink a lot more water. But,
yeah,
every time I get on the wagon, I'm like, I'll just have one Starbucks. Well, then it leads to second Starbucks, and I'm like, well, I had two Starbucks in one day. Well, then you know what happens. Exactly what you're talking about. I have the same problem. All of a sudden, I'm like, man, I woke up in the morning and my hands are like this. You're like, oh God, my hands. And, it's like cracking as you open your fingers. And you're
yeah,
like, oh, the Starbucks, man. Oh, just too much
yeah,
and your body tells you now. And now we have this like light switch in our system because we're so highly tuned. Now the tuning is saying, hey, bro, you can't eat that anymore,
yeah,
you know? And you're
yeah,
like, yes, I can. I'm going to have my Starbucks.
yeah. You can totally use the scientific method. You know,
Yeah.
you can do a test on yourself. It reminds me of Jordan Peterson, the famous
Yeah.
psychiatrist.
Yeah.
Uh,
He's
his,
struggling with some stuff now, right?
yeah,
I heard. Yeah.
right, right. But his daughter Michaela, she had terrible, debilitating autoimmune problems where her joints were having to be replaced as a very young girl. And she was smart enough to say, hey, wait a minute. I'm just going to isolate this thing. I'm going to search for one food that makes me feel better, and found that she came across beef, It's like, all right, I'm
Yeah.
just going to eat beef and water, and I'm eliminating all the other variables. Well, lo and behold, that was magic, you know,
Yep.
and I get it because that's been magic for me too. And then I learn about ketosis and the ketogenic diet and autophagy and mitophagy, the active mechanisms for why she got better. She was just duped
Right.
like the rest of us. She did not know the things she was eating were suboptimal for human consumption. You know,
Right.
and I wonder, Rob, like, what is the percentage of people that are aware of these things we're talking about? Like, is it like 20%? Um, I don't know, but if anybody has any doubts about what we're talking about, I have a book recommendation, and I'm
Okay.
not, I have no, I'm not making any money from this, but there's a guy named Daniel Trevor, and his job was a researcher. He was a deep
Hmm.
diver as his job, and he was one of these guys that, from outward appearances, he looked very healthy. He was lean, and he's a happy guy, getting a lot of stuff done, but he almost died of like a triple bypass. So he dug deeply into why did that happen to him, and what he learned was remarkable. It's all these same lessons, but the title of his book is how sugar, excess sugar, seed oils, and carbohydrates make us fat, sick, and addicted, and how to escape their grip. If you want to read one book that'll educate you to a depth where you'll be way smarter than me on this topic, you'll know way more about your body than you've ever learned from any anatomy course or physiology or doctor or surgeon or nutritionist. Daniel
Right.
Trigger, in this little book, he will make you a wizard of your body. And if you'll just follow what he recommends, I can't guarantee it, but there's a likelihood
No,
that you might live
I
an extra
I'm at
30 years.
I'm at the point I can kind of guarantee it. It's like I'm living proof, so are you, you
Yeah,
know, and I have these young kids that I work with at my part-time gig. Um, and you know, these guys look at me and they just go, dude, what are you doing?
yeah,
Like, I'm 28 years old and I'm fat. I've got all these issues. I'm starting to have problems, and they look at me and go, dude, you're 60 and I don't look nothing like you.
yeah, yeah,
And so I think it's yes, we can pretty much guarantee that if you just do the basics, you
yeah.
don't even have to get crazy. Just do
Yeah.
the basics,
Yeah. And for
right?
anybody that might be suffering with any mental illness, like schizophrenia, bipolar, even if you just have anxiety and depression, I've got another book recommendation. Uh,
Okay.
there's
Well,
a
you know what? I'd like you to just give me those, send those to me and then I'll put them in the
okay,
comment stuff.
yeah, but there's a book called Brain Energy, and in this book, Dr. Chris Palmer goes into a lot of depth about the technical aspects of mitophagy and autophagy, and basically all these mental illnesses are simply malnourishment of parts of your brain, where your brain does not get the energy that it needs in order to work right. For the longest time, I thought it was just a brain chemistry imbalance, but it's about fuel, it's about energy.
Right.
Parts of your brain that are going, they're starving, and of course that's not good. And there's parts of your body that is starving. You might be morbidly obese, you might weigh 800 pounds, but that doesn't mean you can't be malnourished,
Right.
because
Right.
you are. Yeah, there's
Right.
certain things that your body needs that it ain't getting, if you're following that food pyramid, because that thing's exactly inverse. What they told us to
Yeah.
eat the most of is what we should be eating the least of.
It's
Uh,
so
how,
crazy.
how criminal was that?
It's so crazy. It's like the recycle symbol, You know who made that?
Well,
Plastic company. It was to
well,
get everybody off their back, Same with the food, Let's do this food pyramid, and
right,
focus on the things we want you to eat because this is the abundance of stuff that we can produce quickly and make money on it.
right.
A lot
And,
easier.
and then there's tap water. Well,
Yep.
what I
I don't
learned
I don't drink tap water.
was that fluorine, fluoride, these were byproducts of aluminum production. So they were having to
Hmm.
spend a fortune getting rid of this stuff as hazardous waste. Well, some brilliant guy got this idea. They're like, hey, when you apply this stuff topically to teeth, there might be some benefit to preventing cavities. Never did they talk about actually swallowing the stuff. And what do? They put it in all these municipal
Yep.
water systems. By the grace of God, there was a lawsuit back in September of last year.
I just
Uh,
saw that.
yeah, and now there's like maybe 21 million people that no longer have that crap in their water. But there's still another 380 million of us,
Yeah.
myself included, where we got to get that crap out of our water. I hope people, I just called my water board here in Northern Kentucky, and I made another call to Frankfurt to try to, put some pressure on these people.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
also put a call into my congressman, Thomas Massey. He's from my district. So everybody needs to pay attention to these things. Just
Yeah.
because you think people are looking out for us, there's a high likelihood that they're doing exactly the opposite.
Well,
Yeah,
it's the death by a thousand cuts. So that's the whole point. Is it, it's like China would never come straight at America and try to take us over because they know there's too many guns, right?
yeah, right,
So so it's kind of the same mentality with these, corporations and companies. They know it's like if we just come in the front door and say this is what we're going to do, they're not going to get away with it.
right.
But their underground network is, let's put this in the water. Let's rename this. It's actually natural.
Yeah,
Okay. Well, dog doo doo is natural, but I'm not going to put it in my food. So,
yeah,
it's this trickery of words and the way that they slip things in little by little all over the place. And they do that thousands of times over 100 different products.
yeah,
We're basically eating tar, you know?
yeah, yeah. And it does take some discipline, like I do not eat at restaurants anymore.
Yeah.
None.
I've
Um,
I've pretty much limited most of my stuff to like maybe a hamburger because
yeah,
it's like, okay, it's probably the same hamburger I buy in the store basically.
yeah,
And a lot of times we'll just throw the top bun away and try to just, limit how much of, the any extra.
yeah,
But as far as like just going to Chinese restaurants and just eating out anymore, plus it's too darn expensive, dude.
right.
Like I can make, grass-fed hamburgers from Costco a whole lot cheaper than going out and just eating two hamburgers,
Yeah,
in the end. So,
yeah. I mean, there are some things on the horizon. Like I've heard of this organization called Seed Oil Scout, where they'll
okay.
identify restaurants that don't use seed oils. So I don't think there's any in where I live, but I'm hopeful someday that'll change. It'll have to, as there's more
Yeah.
and more of us
Yeah. Right.
that just opt out of the matrix until they fix the problems. That's going to hit them in the wallet and the purse, and they're going to
Yeah.
make. You know that they're going to change, if for no other reason, if not morality, it's just going to be greed,
Yeah.
whatever it takes.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. But that's why we're having this conversation. And I'm hoping that we can just continue these conversations and I can, talk with other athletes just like you and just keep it going and, maybe just get some traction with this kind of stuff,
Right.
right?
And there is some positive signs. Dr. Casey Means and some other experts on these things have had meetings with RFK Jr. He seems to be doing a really good job of holding these people's feet to the fire, subtracting a lot of this toxic crap from the manufacturing process. So, I don't want to just be nothing but darkness. It's like, to me,
Yeah.
there's a lot of hope, and it's like there's a lot of answered prayers. Like this is, I think we're getting out of this mess, but
Yeah.
hopefully COVID was just that thing um, that that brought a lot of people's attention to the
Yeah.
trickery.
Yeah.
So as crazy as it sounds, I'm kind of thankful for that aspect of COVID
Right.
because
Well,
there
with
was a lot.
all clouds come silver linings, so it's like, it's an old proverb, but
Yeah,
it is true,
yeah,
you know. When there's a positive, there's a negative. There's dark, there's light. So there's always got to be something come out of every action reaction.
yeah. And there's some great stories out there. There's a guy in Arizona. I think he might be in Phoenix. His name's Hal Granmer. I think he used to be a pilot. Anyway, he had some money to invest, and somehow he got into these senior living homes,
Hmm.
and he started following, the standard American diet protocol for all the folks that he was, taking care of. And everybody was just getting sicker and sicker and more crazy and more dementia and Alzheimer's and all that stuff. And he just decided he's going to try, this ketosis thing. And he started cooking healthy, beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. And lo and
Yeah,
behold, his patients got so much better that they started going home. And
really.
and he was a moral man. He was like, you know what? This isn't really good for business because I'm feeding these people so well that they're no longer my customer. But he was just that much of a good man that he was happy to do it. And those families were happy to get their moms and their dads back. We need more Hal Granmers in the world.
Right, for
That's
sure.
That's wonderful. Um,
Yeah.
I'm so proud of him. Yeah.
Well, imagine if he did that and then people started moving their family members to that place because it became the health capital of that situation, right?
Right.
And my friend Scott Purcell, where we kind of started this whole conversation, um, I raced Baja with him year before the 1000, and he lives in Cabo. So he's actually a real estate agent and he's working on something there in Cabo right now. And it's kind of in the same lines as that, like where it's a health retreat kind of situation. I don't have the details, but
Right.
that's kind of what the why he is kind of learned a little more than me. I mean, he's focusing on that aspect of it and the health side of it, and he's constantly posting stuff on the internet as well. So we just that's where we just started this podcast, just me and him, and now I've got you, and hopefully we can keep going with this.
Well, I'm happy to talk about it. One of my other heroes in this space is an older lady, Barbara O'Neill. Are you familiar with
Yep.
her?
Yep.
I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
she started that health retreat in Australia, and she
Yeah.
was really moving the needle as far as educating people about the proper way to feed the human body. And what did they do? They threw her out of the country. Her husband
Really?
wrote a book about what they did to her called The Assassination of Barbara O'Neill, because she was chopping down the money trees by
Right.
using, biblical knowledge and morality and common sense. When she had a child, the poor kid had colic or something terrible, and she was following the standard protocols for it, listening to her doctors, and was having no success. Finally, she went to an older neighbor and said, "Hey, what do you do about this problem?" And I forget what the remedy was, but she tried it. Instantly, the kid was better. And then she just got her education. Like, okay, I got to stop listening to the doctors,
Right.
start listening to the elder people in the
Right.
community here, and that's how she started down this road. And now she's one of the most educated people in the
I
world.
know she's all over the internet. You can't,
Ah,
and it's like, and of course everybody copies her and uses her for like, something like impotency commercials. And I'm like, okay,
but
now
I,
you made it.
I'm so proud of her cognitive capacity. That lady
Yeah.
quotes Bible scriptures kind of like Charlie Kirk did. I mean, that guy was
Yeah.
like a supercomputer, and so is she. There's
But be
something
careful.
wonderful.
You know what happens. You you speak too much truth, and John the
Well,
Baptist, he got his head chopped off.
well, I have some thoughts about that, Rob, and it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool in a weird way. I'm like, you know what? Charlie Kirk did something I think's amazing. He got out of bed every day and he said, God, guide my steps. So because he did that, and the way he attacked educating people, the kind way that he did with compassion, guess
Right.
what? He put himself in a win-win situation, regardless of whether his heart kept beating or not. He could not lose.
Right.
Because guess
Right.
what? If he's truly gone, um, of all the people I've ever been familiar with, he certainly did things that had to have pleased our Creator. So,
Right.
maybe he's on the same status as people like Enoch, that story of Enoch, where
Hmm.
before the biblical flood came along, all of a sudden Enoch just disappeared. And from what I've understood, Enoch was so similar to Jesus Christ in the way that he had this loving feel about everything. And Jesus was like, "You're coming to be with me. There's nothing that the earthly human experience can teach you. You have acquired perfection." And I can't help but think that God's thinking that same thing about Charlie Kirk. You
Yeah.
know, that,
No,
that
that
guy,
that's very profound because,
yeah. I mean, I
you,
have these
you could
questions
not,
like, was Charlie Kirk the Enoch of 2025? And if he was,
yeah. I
good
mean,
on you, dude.
you could
Good on
not
you.
watch something, you could not watch him with an open mind and not think that he actually cared about people, you
Right,
know, realistically, like for
right,
real.
right.
Even people he didn't agree with or his different ideals, but he didn't like hate people, right?
Yeah,
Like they try to convert that and they try to say those things, and it's like,
yeah.
no. And I went to Charlie Clerk's memorial here in Glendale.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it was we made a point to make it there, and we
Yeah.
got up at 3 o'clock in the morning and we ground it out and we did it, we got there. And I'll have to admit, I, grew up as a Southern Baptist kind of kid, and been around religion my whole life. And going to that thing at Charlie Kirk was, man, tore you up. Really did.
I tell you what, he inspired people deeply, and probably since he's been gone, even more. And you know what I say to Charlie Kirk? Well played, well played. Well, God had to have said, "Well done, my faithful servant." So in that regard, um, I'm not really that sad. I'm so proud of the way he conducted himself. There's a way to disagree with people and still love them.
Right.
That that's the way
Right.
Jesus would have handled it. If you really watch Charlie Kirk, you say, man, if Jesus was alive, I think that's how he would have handled it too.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think there's some real magic with that whole movement with Turning Point USA. I think that he's inspired thousands, maybe millions of people. And
Yeah.
isn't that
For
interesting?
sure.
How not only was it the turning point, in his personal movement, but I believe it could quite likely be the turning point for all of the world.
For the
Uh,
morality
yeah,
aspect of it.
yeah,
Yeah, for
yeah. To
sure.
steer back toward morality and away from the love of money, because those are diametrically opposed ways of doing business in these meat suits that we're living in.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have to find a balance. But I swear, I'm so proud of Charlie Kirk. What a great dude. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Got a little choked up there for a minute, but
Uh,
it was pretty intense. I'd never been anything like that before. Like it was just okay, even if you didn't agree with him, you didn't care. Just the whole fact that that many people, that had the same mindset in the same place at the same time, dude, there's no way you could even compare that kind of power.
I wish I could
Period.
have gotten to feel that energy that you got to feel that day.
Yeah.
Good for you. That's great.
I just couldn't keep a dry eye, the
Yeah,
whole time. It was just,
yeah,
despite the acrobatics and the Trumpish and all that stuff. It was,
yeah,
yeah, of course. I was like, okay, this is a little over the top, some of the things, but the bottom line was, it was like why the core reason of why we were there.
yeah. You
That's
know,
all that mattered.
it kind of makes me think of my whole life story, Rob. I used to be kind of a scoundrel. I was out for me,
Nah,
and I had a degree of selfishness, and I walked on people, to get things that I wanted. That I had developed a conscience later in life, and I thought, man, you were kind of a butthole.
I think everybody's gone through that a little bit at some point, no matter what.
And I went through kind of this spiritual awakening thing, and that was magical, and that I can't even describe it in words. But basically, I said a prayer one Christmas Eve, and I asked God. I said, why is there so much brokenness in the world? Why is everybody out to get everybody else? And then I went to sleep. Well, in the middle of that night, I had this love in me, Rob, that felt like if you envision every person in the world, all over the globe, taking the energy that it takes to smile and just feel happy. If
Right.
you took all those people's love and you stuck it in me in that moment, that's how
Yeah.
wonderful it felt. Um, so I was a completely different man after that.
Right.
I feel like I have felt the love of Jesus Christ, and it was
That's awesome.
absolutely unbelievable, mind blowing. I cried like a baby, and it wasn't sad. It was happy tears. I was so
Right.
overwhelmed. I was like, what did I do to deserve this feeling of love that I just felt? And
Yeah.
now I feel like I have this understanding of the way God works. Imagine if you're a father and you buy your son an expensive, let's say, motorcycle for Christmas. And that kid just doesn't feel grateful, like, is this all I get, Dad? Well, do you think that that's going to motivate you as a father to go overboard to do for him even more? I don't
Nope.
think so, you know? But when you have that posture of gratefulness, when that young man says, "Oh my God, Rob, thank you so much. I know you worked so hard to give me this motorcycle. I love you so much. You're just wonderful. You're the best." Well, guess what that's going to do for you? you're going to be motivated to just shower that kid with more gifts because of this posture of gratefulness and
Right.
thankfulness. And I think that's how God works. I
Yeah.
think
Oh, for sure.
when you
100%.
develop that posture of gratefulness, all of a sudden there's like these tailwinds at your back that are propelling you toward whatever, God pleasing endeavor you might be
Yeah.
pursuing. To me, that's magical. And I've seen these things so often that I can no longer call them a coincidence. And
Right.
that's pretty neat.
That's pretty awesome. Well, that's pretty cool. I mean, this conversation has turned into something I didn't quite expect, you know? So,
I'm a completely different man than I was as a 20-year-old, and now that
sure.
I'm close 60, and now I feel like I understand, like I was being given gifts that I did not deserve. I didn't deserve to make that money or to develop that fame because I was kind of one of the monsters I've been complaining about during this podcast. But
Right.
I think that God knew that one day He was going to get through my thick skull and turn me around. So it's almost as if now I have all these wonderful things, and
Yeah.
now I feel like I'm deserving of them, you know?
Right.
But back then it didn't make any sense. But now
It
I'm
was
able
just
to,
stuff.
yeah, yeah. So I'm more grateful than ever, and I give him all the glory and all the credit because there was some bizarre things that happened back in the day that I couldn't make sense of at the time. One of them came down to the last race between me
Right.
and Scott Plessinger at Seattle International Raceway. It was the National Hare Scrambles of the final round, and Scott had all I let's see, all let's see, I had to beat Scott, and then he had to finish worse than second for me to win the championship. Okay. So my back was up against the wall, and I was depressed. The week before that race, I wanted to cry. And my grandfather told me, he said, Scott, what's wrong with you? And I said, well, I'm in trouble. I just lost the championship to Plessinger, the GNCCs the week before because I made a
Right.
mistake. Something happened. And I'm getting ready to lose again. And I said, I'm so depressed about this. I don't even want to go to that race because I don't want to witness myself getting my butt kicked again. So
Right.
I'm down in the dumps. And my grandfather, Tom, he said, Scott, he said, there's power in words. And I was like, okay, what is this? Some kind of
Yeah,
religious
here you go,
stuff?
profane dude.
He was into going to church all the time and all that stuff.
Sure, sure.
And I loved him, so I listened to him. He said, Scott, I want you to speak these words. He said, I want you to say, I'm going to go to that race this weekend. I'm going to win the race and I'm going to win the championship. So out of love for him, I said it with no sincerity in my voice, right? And he picked up on that. And he's like, no, Scott. And he was a big man and he was stern. He said, I want you to say it. And I want you to feel the meaning of the words in your heart as you say the words.
Right.
So I took a deep breath and I tried to feel the words. And this time I said it with a lot of sincerity. And Rob, in that moment, all of a sudden I became relaxed. I became eager to go to that race. I started prepping my goggles and doing the things and jogging and all the things I normally did. And you know what happened in that race? I won overall that day. And Rodney Smith showed up out of nowhere. And he beat Scott Plessinger and got second that day. And I ended up winning the championship. And,
uh,
and to me, like Rodney was out of the equation back then. Scott and I won all the races back then, pretty much. So either he
yeah,
was going to win or I was going to win. Um, so like that was my grandfather's way of leading me to, they say you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make him
sure,
drink. Well,
sure.
that day he was leading me to water, and the way that event unfolded was next worldly. It really was. Like I go back and look at the footage from that race,
Yeah.
and Rodney was going to beat me. He was going way faster than me. He was reeling me in very, very quickly. But then he hit something, broke his bike or something, and had a setback. That's the only reason I won. Um, so now it's like I feel like I know what happened that day. Um,
Yeah. Not that God broke his bike, right? But
and I'm sure
but
God loved
he just
Rodney
allowed
Smith
you to
too.
continue on out front until he got back up.
Yeah. it sounds kind of crazy and corny because God loves Scott Plessinger and Rodney Smith just as
Yeah.
much as me. But
Yeah.
on that event, he had an
Uh,
opportunity to teach me a lesson.
right.
And, I'm as a 50-year-old, 58-year-old man, now I
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
it.
No, it's funny because that's very, very realistic. I got my little grandson crying in the background. Um, you know, I had something similar, in the Baja 1004, and I ended up just like deciding to do this whole thing Ironman, and they didn't have an award for it at the time. It was basically you just said you were going to do it, and then they basically put your name on a list. And so I rode the Open Pro class, and it's kind of a similar thing where I just had to give everything up, to get to that point, like you're talking about, where, I had 4 kids at home and I'm trying to like build a business. I'm trying to pay for my bills and then I'm going to race the Ball 1000 Ironman. The wife's looking at me like I'm a nutcase. And I said, no, this is what I have to do. And so, I get out there and do this thing. And it was a God thing for sure. I mean, I made some huge mistakes. I forgot my enduro jacket in the middle of the night. I ended up riding in 40-degree weather with no
Wow.
jacket and, missing a section of the race course and getting lost for an hour and finding my way back in the fog. And, just all those things that you have to you struggle through. And it's like, you just
Yeah.
somehow it all just kind of came together,
Yeah.
and I still, got it got it to the finish line, and got the very first Iron Rider award from Malcolm Smith. How cool is that?
Yeah.
Like,
That's
so, I don't care about any of the other stuff. I was just super stoked that I got Malcolm Smith to hand me the award. I was like, I was pretty stoked about that. And so anyway, just I totally get it, dude. I get where you're coming from. I get what you're saying, and I hope it's inspiring to other people because the health thing, the God thing, just it's good stuff. You know, we have a lot of wisdom, in our age.
Well, life is kind of whimsical, magical, like if you look for these things, they're there, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, they really are. It's pretty cool that that's the way this works. And I think I think Charlie Kirk was on the right track. I think if we can be guided by those biblical teachings, um, life's going to be great. Yeah, we can
yeah,
go to sleep. We can go to sleep and not be worried. Um, just do our best.
yep,
Like
yep,
R.K. Jr. says, he had that drug abuse problem when he was younger, and he went through a spiritual transformation thing, very similar to what happened to me. I've read his story, and he gets up every day and said, God, just let me do the next right thing.
yeah,
And if everybody did that, I tell you what, there's more than enough land, there's more than enough food, there's more than enough money. If everybody just got up and said, let's just do the next right thing,
right.
instead of screw our neighbor before he can screw us.
Yeah,
We're,
yeah,
we're broken, man. We're broken.
yeah,
We got
yeah.
we got to do better. Yeah,
Well, I'll tell you what, I'd love to continue this conversation. Just like maybe go into another segment of it as far as like, we do my Scott and myself, we've done some blood work and we're just trying to back up what we've actually done so we could actually
yeah,
show people like this is where we're at. This is what
right.
it looks like. It would
Yeah,
be awesome to like all three of us maybe do a podcast one more time and just show that and talk about our actual results of what we've
yeah.
done and how it looks, right?
Yeah, I think
And
that would be interesting. Before I decided to take matters into my own hands health wise, I was seeing a psychiatrist at a big hospital here in Cincinnati area, and I was seeing my primary care physician for my thyroid problems.
right,
Both of these specialists really wanted me on medications for the rest of my life.
right,
And I had a heart to heart conversation with both of them. And I said, I want to try to find a solution to this, a natural solution, so that I don't have to go on these medicines for the rest of my life. And I said, if I
right,
don't succeed, I'm going to be back here, and then I'm going to be willing, to sign up for these medications. And lo and behold, I found my way back to health. All my prescription bottles got thrown in the trash, and I
that's
kind
awesome.
of I kind of cowboyed it with the psychiatric stuff, the recommendation that Chris Palmer makes is that you do this with a professional. You get yourself in ketosis, but people that have been in a mental hospital, they have much more discipline than the average person because they don't want to go back to that hellish environment.
Right.
So you talk
Right.
about us racers having discipline, to prepare for races. You can't imagine what it's like to be held captive in one of those places. Um,
Sure.
so anyway, that gave me the motivation to take that part of it very seriously. And I got to have some very fun conversations with my doctors after I succeeded. And I got my blood work, and I got the psychiatric evaluations and all these things, and I passed with flying colors. Um, my psychiatrist actually asked me for some of these reference books that I had read, and
That's
I thought,
awesome.
wow, that's really cool. Not only was she not mad at me, she
Yeah.
was supportive, and she wanted to learn these things that I learned so that she could share them with future patients. And long after that, or not long after that, she left that organization. Um,
Really.
but my primary care physician, that conversation was completely different. He was mad as hell at me, and probably because I was no longer going to contribute to maybe him making a bonus, and which was going to lead him and his wife to a Bahama vacation. You know what I mean?
Oh, I
Uh,
know what you mean.
uh, and also, it's almost like I threatened his superiority, his intellectual capacity.
Right.
It's
I'm the
almost like
doctor. I spent all this time going to college and I'm the one who learned all this stuff. I
right,
should be the expert in this field. You should listen
right,
to me. Yeah.
right. And that's
Yeah.
what's crazy about this thing, Rob, is that sometimes I think that if you have no education, you actually have a better chance at acquiring wisdom because you haven't been subjected to, let's say, 8 years of brainwashing, compromised curriculums that the power
Correct.
developed. Now, here's a crazy story. I found this guy in Australia that was a very intelligent vet. He helped animals. And he said he did a podcast one day. And he said, "Do you know what happened to the lifespans of dogs?" He said, "Did you know that a golden retriever's lifespan used to be 14 years?
Right.
Um, and now it's 8 years." He said, "Do you want to know what happened?" He said, the makers of kibble dog food spent a ton of money to basically take command of the veterinary schools. And in those schools, they taught those young, impressionable vet students that kibble, which is made of corn, wheat, and soybeans, was the ideal optimal nutrition for a dog. And the general population followed suit. And now what happened? Our
Yep.
dogs and cats, our pets, don't live near as long as they used to, and they have chronic illnesses just like we humans do.
Yep.
Well, we
You just watched the science project in advance,
the,
happening right in front of you.
there it is, and all dogs came from wolves. Wolves are carnivores. We know
Right.
that. So all these pets are suffering all the same problems we humans are from the exact same damn thing. We
Yeah.
were not meant to eat corn, wheat, and soybeans, and neither were dogs. Um, isn't that shameful? You know, those
Well,
those
I'm not
precious
a
little
dog, so
animals,
I don't eat corn.
those precious little animals have been duped just like us.
Yeah. Just for
Isn't
profit.
it's it's sickening. It's
Just for
sickening.
profit.
So now I'm trying really hard. I have 6 dogs, and you
Oh
know,
God.
I'm trying to feed them beef and pork and
It's
venison.
expensive.
It is, but I love my dogs, and I want to treat them the way I would want to be treated if I was a
Yeah,
dog. You know?
exactly. Well, hey
Uh,
Scott, we're gonna cut off here. I don't want to cut you off until it
no, no,
shuts off on me again.
no worries.
But let's definitely do the blood testing. That would be great. Like you and me and Scott and get together and show our results and show what happened.
Yeah, I have records of mine because I actually work at a hospital. So
Right.
every year I get my blood work. So I
And
should.
I also have the same. I get it every 3 months.
Okay,
A
cool,
test. Yeah.
cool.
Well, Scott, I'm glad you came on, and we definitely want to continue this conversation. So appreciate you coming, and we'll get back with you again and have another cast. Thanks again.